When applying for an E-2 visa, you're going to get to the point of where you need to put your money where your mouth is and actually buy a business. Now the problem is, that's scary. Most E-2 applicants are putting their life savings on the line, and it's going to be nothing worse than doing all that and then finding out that the business you bought doesn't meet the requirements USCIS have set out and you're denied your visa and maybe lose all your money. It's scary, and you're going to want to try and mitigate that risk as much as possible. And that's why specifically in this video I want to talk about why we think going through an E-2 broker is actually the best choice for most people. That's exactly what we did. We found a business that would look perfect for us, and we definitely do it that way again if we were starting out from scratch. Now, from what I can tell, there's three main advantages that business broker gives you. That is opportunity, security, and credibility. I'm going to go through each of these one by one. Let's start off with opportunity. We'd just sold our house. We had all the funds in our bank account, and we booked flights to the States to go out there and buy a business. And we were determined after being there for 2 weeks that we were going to go home with something suitable. The thing is, before we went out, we were looking at as much websites as possible. We were on Craigslist, we were on Facebook groups, we were emailing companies directly and looking through the business broker websites. But because we had a particular town we wanted, a particular industry and a particular budget, we were left with a grand total of 0 potential businesses. As you can imagine, that left us feeling a little bit deflated. But right before we went out to Florida for our 2-week business trip, we still spoke to a business broker directly. Because here is the untold secret. A lot of the best businesses don't go on the websites. Why? Well, simply, if Joe Bloggs over here has spoken to a business broker and he's told him exactly what he wants, that business broker, once a suitable business comes across his desk, is going to go and call Joe and say, "Hey Joe, I've got a business, do you want this business?" And Joe's going to go, "Yes please sir, I'll have that business." And that business never then makes it to the website. And that's exactly one of the main reasons why talking to a business broker really creates an opportunity there that you would not see otherwise. It kind of gets you into that members only club. And that's exactly what happened with us. We told him exactly what we wanted. He was skeptical. But the next day we were flying out to Florida. We put our phones, of course, in airplane mode as we were flying, and as we landed, we turned airplane mode off, looked at our emails, and lo and behold, the broker is saying, "Give me a call. There's actually something you might be interested in." And that's the business we bought. So without the broker, we really wouldn't have had the opportunity to buy a suitable business. That brings us on to point 2, safety. You're putting your life savings on the line. The number one thing that's going to be going through your mind is this business a con? Are we going to be denied a visa? Is this all going to go through the way we expect it to? And this is where a broker can help alleviate some of those concerns. Of course, nothing in life is a certainty. Stuff can go wrong, the broker can't be 100% sure of that, but they can vastly increase the odds of things going smoothly for both you and the seller. So here's the thing, the broker, they have a reputation, and if they're a well-established broker, it's took them a long time to get that reputation. They don't want to risk it on one transaction. So they'll make sure that both the buyer and the seller is vetted. From the seller's perspective, they look at everything, paperwork, stories, expenses, tax returns, everything, to make sure, does this seem like a legitimate, healthy business that they're trying to sell, or are they trying to offload something that is a piece of crap? If it's the latter, the broker's not going to touch it. Kind of the same with you as the buyer. They're going to ask you questions, they're going to want proof of funds, they probably want to see which attorney you're working with, just to show you're a serious buyer and you ain't a tire kicker. If all that lines up, and only if all that lines up, the broker will then try to introduce you to one another, or at least be the go-between. And that's where the broker then stays useful and relevant. Because when you're trying to buy something like this, there's so much emotions going on, both from the seller's and the buyer's perspective. As the buyer, you're putting your life savings on the line, you want to make sure you're not getting conned, you want to make sure that you're going to satisfy the visa requirements, so you're going to be quite nervous and suspicious of everything. And the same's going to be said about the seller. I mean, I had the same issue selling my house. You know what I mean? You're skeptical about what's happening. You don't want the buyers to pull out. You don't want people that's gonna, let's say, ruin the business, because most people care about the businesses they built. So the broker can take a lot of that emotional energy out of it, look at it objectively and go, actually, does this all add up together? You know, are these people compatible for the deal? And then they can make that deal happen, and they can find out, what does the seller want to settle for? What's the buyer willing to give? And they'll go in between and just make that deal happen as smoothly as possible. And then that's where the broker still stays relevant, because once you decide you want to make a deal and you've shook on it and things are going pretty well, we've got a few legal bits that we need to take care of. Paperwork. The broker's great at that. They've got a sixth sense for all this stuff. You know, this is what they do day in, day out. So they can make sure that this is drafted perfectly to protect both you and the seller. So stuff like asset purchase agreements, or even addendums to contracts. And very importantly, escrow agreements. Escrow agreements, in case you don't know, from an E-2 buyer's perspective, it's like a magic shield. It's the absolute best thing you can have. Because what the escrow agreement is, it's a legally binding agreement that says you must buy this business upon a set condition. And that set condition from an E-2 perspective can only be one thing. There's only one thing USCIS will accept. And that's the condition that you will buy the business upon approval or grant of the E-2 visa, and you must legally buy the business under that condition. And USCIS will accept that one stipulation in there. And if that doesn't happen, if you don't get granted the visa, you don't have to pay. Now here's the thing, your money still has to be in an escrow account, so the money leaves your account but doesn't yet go to the seller's account. It kind of sits in this legally binding limbo in between. And what that proves from an E-2 perspective is that your funds are at risk and cannot be recovered unless that one technicality happens. Now, we've not been able to do that, unfortunately, with our business, because there's a couple of small technicalities between us and the seller that didn't quite line up to facilitate that. But that's not a reflection on the broker itself. And of course, I'll be talking about this in a dedicated video of how we bought our particular business. And that brings me on to the third point, credibility. The thing is, you can be very honest, have great integrity, but USCIS don't really get to see that until they meet you in person, which is the interview phase. Before that, they have to look at your application and process that. So at that point, hard evidence is king. Now, a good business broker helps you with that evidence because the business is vetted, they're credible. It makes the business deal not seem informal, but seem like it's a legitimate professional transaction. All the paperwork's going to stand up to scrutiny. And when they look into the financials, because of all the evidence you've given them, projections can be made with a degree of certainty to them. And that really, really helps your case going forward, because you're going to be giving all that to your immigration attorney. And I'm going to speak about the immigration attorney in a separate video, because our business with them is not fully concluded yet. And I'd like to speak about that once we have the complete picture. But what I will say about this, the immigration attorney's job is to look at all the stuff you provided them, which is a lot of evidence, and package all that together in an honest, flattering light to give to USCIS. And then hopefully then they can process that application and give you an interview. But you giving the immigration attorney a good solid business allows them to more cleanly put your application together. The cleaner your application is, the easier it is for USCIS to process it. That means it's quicker. There's more chance of you getting a quicker approval with all the evidence that's required in a strong case than one's a little bit flaky, where it might take them longer to sift through the stuff and request evidence from the attorney or myself. So with all that in mind, that's why the reputation or the credibility of the business broker also really helps you out in the long run. Well, I'm losing some delight, so let's wrap this up. What are the downsides of the business broker? I'd say the first one's cost. They take about 10% commission off every sale. Now, the seller technically pays for it, but the businesses are priced at least 10% higher on their websites anyway, so indirectly, the buyer is paying for that as well. To me, that's a cost of doing business. I'm absolutely fine with that, especially the circumstances I've got coming in as an E-2 applicant. Security, safety guarantees, they're very important when life savings on the line and you come up from a different country and you've got all this scrutiny above you. So it's a cost I think is well worth doing, and I do it every single time. Second thing, which may be a downside, maybe an upside. I talked about it earlier as an upside, but here's a downside of it, that you have to talk to the broker. You can't just one-on-one talk to the seller, at least in the early stages. We're at the point now where me and the seller talk directly a lot of the time, but in the early stages, we have to go to the broker. So I have to contact my broker, then they contacted his broker, even though they're in the same company, and then you have to go through this chain of stuff. Now, that's typically not how I would do business. I sold my house a few months ago, and I made sure that I spoke to the buyers because I wanted to vet them myself. I wanted my opinion of them. And there were a few people I did not sell a house to, even though they offered the price I wanted for it, because I didn't like them. I didn't think they were either going to, I thought they might be flaky, drop out, or I just didn't want to give the house to them. I thought they might be an issue for the neighbours. And as a buyer, I'd also like to see what the seller's like up front. And that's something you don't get with the broker in quite the same way, not until at least you're further down the road and a deal's been made. Thankfully, once I got to meet the seller, really liked him, and I actually think from my impression of him that the business is in a very good standing and he's very honest. So once I met him, actually I was very, very relieved, but I didn't get to know that until I met him in person. But with all that being said and done, I would do it this way again if I had to do this process from the beginning. And that's my thoughts and experiences of going with a business broker. If you want to know more about the broker I've used and everything, just drop me a message and I'll get back to you. And if you want to know more about our move to the States or see more videos like this, you know what to do. Leave a comment in the comment section below with any questions. I'd love to make some follow-up videos based on them. And hit that bell notification and subscribe button to be alerted of any new videos as soon as they drop. But until then, thank you all for watching, see you soon, and as always, take care.